Good morning and welcome to Unusual Activity powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Marmonides. Thank you for joining us this morning, this 10th of February 2015. Certainly lots happening in the marketplace. We have futures this morning higher by a bit over 12 handles at 20.55 even. We have crude oil coming off of some strong days just a bit in the morning here, lower by 51 cents at $52.35. We have gold lower by $4, continuing its bit of a decline as of late at $1,237.60. We have platinum lower by $3.10, continuing its decline as well at $1,217.30. We have the 10-year, folks. We've been discussing the 10-year, the 2-year, and the 30-year quite a bit recently. So we had the 10-year now at just below 2%. What a comeback in yield on the 10-year. Now we're at 2% here, folks. Rather important moves here, and this is something we will continue to watch rather closely. Here, the 30-year above the 2.5 level. Remember, we went down to the 2.2 level not too long ago. We have the 5-year back in that 1.5 area. So again, interesting momentum both in the equity markets and in the treasury. So keeping an eye on everything. And the dollar strong today, 94.758, higher by 0.303. The euro higher by 1.1307, lower by 0.003. Again, lots of information coming out of the EU and Greece and Ukraine. We'll get into that in just a few moments. We are very pleased to have with us Chris Dunn from TradingProfits.com. He will be joining us in just about 8 minutes or so. So we are certainly looking forward to that as well. So folks, let's have a brief recap of where we were yesterday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lower by 0.53%. S&P 500 lower by 0.42% at 2046.74. We had the Nasdaq lower by 0.39% at 4726.01. If we're taking a look at volatility yesterday, we can certainly we were skirting, well, just below the flat line yesterday at that 2055 level all day yesterday. Rather tight range for the morning and into the early afternoon, and really saw a bit of a decline coming through towards the close of trading yesterday. So one of the things that we'd like to get into is certainly keeping an eye on both geopolitical and macroeconomic news that's coming through the pipe here. So certainly ISIL situation, should something bubble up again, certainly various news or various headlines are making their way into the general news and atrocities and so forth. But we're seeing how these, we want to see whether or not these have an impact on specific markets, both on the macro markets, commodities, currencies, and so forth. Also keeping an eye, and if we have any other OPEC commentary, we'll go through the commentary again that we saw yesterday. If there's anything else coming out of specific countries, both OPEC, non-OPEC countries, will be interesting to see where crude oil, West Texas Intermediate crude, goes from here. in the U.S., we did see a rise in Baltic Dry Index. This is the index that we like to watch on a daily basis, and this basically reports on container ships shipping with respect to grains, raw materials, and so we'd like to watch this. So we did see a rise today, 0.4% to 556 points. It is the first rise in a while, and we'll see if this is a temporary lift. Or do we see a continued downtick here? But again, something that we are keeping a very close eye on. This morning we are a few economic indicators coming out. Certainly the major one that we're keeping an eye on, this is the JOLTS report at 10 o'clock, the job openings and labor turnover survey. We know that Janet Yellen tends to watch this rather closely, and as do we. So it will behoove traders and active investors to really keep an eye on this. 10 o'clock, we also have wholesale trade. 1 o'clock, we have results of the 24 billion three-year note auction today as well. So let's get into some of the geopolitical news that's coming around here. Certainly the Juncker-Tsipras call planned at Greek request. This is according to an EU official. This is supposed to be in the afternoon today. Keeping an eye on that. So again, we mentioned this yesterday. It's a bit of a day by day, a little bit of a cliffhanger. It seems as though a little bit of a drama here. But again, should something of value come out, we'll certainly put that into the Unusual Activity app. On the little bit more on the geopolitical side, Ukrainian forces launch offensive near Mariupol in eastern Ukraine. So again, we've seen an escalation in violence between Russia and the Ukraine, and we'll see if that has specific effects on at least on the macro markets. Also, UK Foreign Minister Hammond says that Britain are actively discussing with Germany the extension and maintenance of sanctions on Russia from the EU. So certainly the sanctions piece of it are certainly something that we're keeping an eye on, and specifically its effect on the Russian economy. So as we get into some of the themes of the day, certainly we're keeping an eye on euro, dollar strength, oil volatility, as we're listening to central bankers speak. Want to know if the deflation continues to be a part of their lexicon. The unfolding Greek drama, if you will. Treasury yield curve. We've been saying this for quite some time. We saw a rather significant increase in Treasury yield as of late. Also, certainly the Russian economy is back in focus, specifically on the heels of the EU-Russian relationship. This is post-meeting last weekend. We saw that Angela Merkel and President Obama had a press conference yesterday. She was rather, as a matter of fact, towards the Greek situation. Diplomacy is still in the cards with the Russian situation, and of course we're in the midst of earnings season. So as we go through the day, as we're hearing news, we'll certainly pass that along. We wanted to go over again just briefly yesterday's OPEC commentary. Again, lowers forecast for 2015 non-OPEC supply growth to 850 billion barrels per day. They're anticipating world oil demand growth forecast rising by 20,000 barrels per day to 1.17 million. And also on the bottom of your page, OPEC cuts forecast to U.S. oil supply growth after a price rout. So again, we mentioned this some time ago, the fact that we could see interesting game theory coming out of OPEC here, and we said this before, and we're still sticking to that. Kind of an interesting situation. So, folks, as we're approaching 9:10 here, we are very pleased to bring in Chris Dunn from Daily Trading Profits. Chris, thank you for joining us this morning. Please, Chris, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we'll dive into the markets this morning.
Hey, thanks, George. Can you hear me clearly first?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. It's good to be here.
No, great. Please, Chris, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background. I know you've been in the business for a while. Tell us, what you've been doing recently, and we'll jump into what you're seeing into the markets this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been trading stocks and futures since about 2001. So what's that, 14 years? And basically around 2008, I noticed the shift in the markets whenever high-speed algorithms started to really kind of take over. So I switched my methodology from more of a discretionary and kind of just random approach to more mechanical, and now I use rules-based systems and kind of semi-automated approach in stocks and futures. And then kind of interestingly, about 18 months ago, one of my hedge fund buddies told me about Bitcoin and digital currencies, and at first I kind of laughed it off and thought it was one of these scammy markets like binary options, but the more I looked into it, the more I really loved it, and so I've been actively actually trading Bitcoin for the past 18 months. And it's interesting, a lot of people still don't really even know what Bitcoin is or know that you can actually trade it, but you can actually trade it just like a stock or a futures contract, and it's actually a lot easier to trade than some of the more competitive markets. So that's what's been exciting. On a personal note, I actually just 2 days ago got back to the U.S. after traveling the world for about 11 months. My wife and I, my wife is also a full-time trader, we went to 30-something countries, and it was really cool because we have about 9,000 trading students around the world in over 40 countries, and so we got to meet up with a lot of people and do trader meetups, and yeah, so that was really fun.
Very cool. So you mentioned Bitcoin, Chris. Dive into it to us. What have you discovered a little, about trading Bitcoin? Give us a a short tutorial, if you will, on what you find interesting about it and trading it and so forth.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know what Bitcoin is, it's actually a decentralized digital currency, which means there's no Fed that's basically controlling money supply or interest rates. It's a pre-planned math-based currency that started in 2009. And since 2009, it's had some pretty epic rises and falls, rises and crashes in its price because it's a new asset and it's going through price discovery right now. And because of that volatility, there's actually a lot of profit potential for people that are professional traders. There's a lot of dumb money in the market right now, which means that there's just a lot of speculators and kind of blind investors that are chasing trends. And the beautiful thing is you can actually short Bitcoin. Which actually wasn't the case the first few years from its inception, but starting about a year ago, there were some exchanges that came out that have started offering that. And so if you look at a Bitcoin chart, you'll notice that there was a pretty massive bubble in the end of 2013 where the price of Bitcoin went from $100 over 1,000, and then in a few weeks crashed back to 500, and it's been on this kind of slow downtrend over the past year or so, and that's actually the third bubble that I've seen since I started trading it, and it's a great thing. A lot of people look at Bitcoin and they kind of laugh it off and say it's a fad, but the number one thing that you have to look at is user adoption and daily transactions. and we're actually at the this month over month, we're at the highest user adoption rates, where we're seeing over 100,000 Bitcoin transactions a day. And a lot of companies like PayPal, eBay, Expedia, Amazon, there's a lot of companies that are actually accepting Bitcoin and preferring it over fiat currency, just because of the way that it works is, so cheap and easy to transact. And there's, Bill Gates is a huge proponent. There's a lot of cool stuff going on in Africa where there's billions of people that don't have access to basic banking services, and this is something that I think is really going to change the world over the next couple of years.
It's certainly very interesting, and being a being a stock trader, futures trader, interesting perspective on Bitcoin. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Let's get into so tell us outside of Bitcoin, what else are you trading? What else are you involving yourself with? If you will, the mundane, more mundane markets. Are you involved in futures? Or are you involved in specific stocks?
Yeah, so I'm actually a big proponent of E-mini futures. That's really been my favorite market since I started trading in 2001. But I tend to focus on the ES, like the four stock indices like the ES, the Russell, NASDAQ, and Dow. I also like trading oil and gold when there's volatility, which there has been recently.
Okay.
I'm more, my trading style in the futures market is kind of pivot to pivot day trading, where I'm going for anywhere from 2 to 5 points on the ES. So not really holding overnight. Usually trading the first 2 hours of the day, sometimes a little pre-market. And so that's on the future side. On the equity side, I tend to trade stuff that's not too overrun with algorithms. I stay away from the Apples and Googles. And I tend to trade some smaller cap stuff that's just trading with big range and a lot of volatility. And yeah, so that's where I'm at on a day trading basis, is usually micro cap or small cap stocks, and then futures depending on what segment of the E-mini market is moving. And then when it comes to Bitcoin, I'm really only taking a couple months of trade, just looking for bigger trends and longer moves on that market.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. So, let me ask you this. So, how do you, go through with us a little bit on how you go about structuring a trade? How do you, what are you primarily on the technical side? Do you just use technical indicators? Do you mix that with various news? Economic news? Do you, how do you what's your thought process on that?
Yeah, so on the E-mini side, I'm terrible at digesting all of the fundamental news and balancing, the geopolitical stuff. I find it really interesting, but for me, it's really hard to make trading decisions based on that. So because of that, I would say I'm 99% technical when it
Okay.
comes to futures. Typically, I use a combination of a daily chart, a 2-minute chart, and a 610 tick chart. So I consider myself a momentum trader,
Okay.
and I'm typically looking for pain inflection points in the market or breakouts into bigger trends. And one thing I've noticed, and I'm kind of open, and I just like to say that I think futures used to trade a lot differently prior to 2008.
Sure.
But ever since the algorithms really started stepping in, I really have become patient in the E-mini market, and I like to wait whenever whenever I can see emotion or I can see, elevated levels of volatility. I'm not a huge fan of trading the chop or kind of mid-range channels. I like to either anticipate larger breakouts or play momentum. 2008 was a great year, and obviously we've had some good action on the rebound and the bull trend the past few years, but I am certainly welcoming elevated levels of volatility or any kind of intermediate to midterm crash.
Got it. No, absolutely. So I think you brought up something rather important, and that is, and this is something that we've seen really through and through, is there's been a marketable change since the 2008-2009 crisis, and certainly behavior has changed, both technically, fundamentally, how people approach news, how people approach technical analysis. So, look, I know that you're getting ready for the Open. Give us, going into this market, we know that uh, January and first few days of February here, certainly volatility has been rather consistent.
Hmm.
If you're watching the ES, we constantly watch ES and the NQs and the CLs and the which is the crude, and the GCs, which is gold. What's your give us first a little bit more macro view in terms of do you think that volatility will continue? First question, and next question is how do you prepare for the day, if you will, knowing
Sure.
if you feel that volatility is still in the cards?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, I'm looking at a daily chart on the ES right now, and we're sitting pretty close to flat on the year, and we've had some really nice volatility inside of what a 80-point range. And so until that ceases to be true, I do expect to see more volatility. We had a couple of nice days here in oil recently,
Right.
playing the bounce. I think a lot of people have been looking for the bounce and trying to play a bounce. And over the past week and a half, we've seen some great rebound setups there. Kind of same in gold. I mean, we've seen elevated levels of volatility in the GC. Um, so yeah, I mean, and I really am terrible at forecasting out more than like 2 days in advance.
Sure. Sure.
But yeah, as far as volatility goes, I'm really happy where we're at right now, and um, I think the biggest possibilities are basically just to stay inside of this kind of 80-point range until that breaks. And if we certainly break out to all-time highs like we've seen in the past few years, I tell people, look, the market conditions are the same until they change, right? So
Sure. Right.
until we get a
Right.
massive panic or some kind of
Right.
snap of the multi-month support here, I expect to see a channel or a breakout to new highs for another kind of bull trend that we've seen from the past few years.
Sure. No, absolutely. So, when you approach, so clearly when we have, continued volatility, so the assumption is that volatility will continue, right? So that's you know, as you said, unless the market changes, we're going to go with the same music. It's going to be playing the same music, if you will. You mentioned crude. Do you think that we're entering a new range for crude, or is this a bit of a head fake for traders? What's your thought on that? Is there can we take this a little bit more seriously in the 50s, or do you think that 40s are still a possibility? Certainly lots of opinions out there. Again,
Sure.
just wanted your thoughts on that.
I wish I had a better answer than I have no clue.
That's fair. No, no, no.
um,
That's perfectly fair.
I think the high probability move, at least the one that I saw, was the bounce off of the mid 40s up to the mid
Hmm.
50s. I'm looking at the CL right now, and we're sitting at prior support turned resistance. From here, it's anybody's guess.
Yeah.
If we get a breakout above 55 and we see some strong setups there, I'll play the momentum. If not, if it starts to fade, I'm a seller. So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
go where the momentum is.
Yeah. No, no. I think that's very fair, and I think that's something that our listeners, when they hear, professionals such as yourself, always the question is, what's this right thought process behind going into a trade. So let me ask you this. So, so currently, and I understand, you don't watch news, and that's fair. We tend to watch a little bit of both. We watch technical analysis. We watch for any specific news that could be impacting markets. How do if you can, kind of jump in with us in terms of maybe, for example, you're looking at the current trade right now, the current levels on The ES, we're looking at 2054.75. Do you use stops? Do you use what kind of methodology do you use when knowing that volatility will continue, right? Volatility will continue
Right.
until it stops, right?
Right.
So what kind of how do you approach a trade? Let's say such a day such as this, where various news coming out from international locations could affect markets. How do you, as a veteran, future stock trading, kind of get your head around the situation and position a good trade for yourself?
Sure, great question. So, and I do pay attention to news. I just don't try to anticipate how the
Sure.
market's going to react to
No
news.
doubt. No doubt.
So, basically my day, how I plan it out and how I look at the markets and what my trading plan is, I look at the scheduled news pieces and basically make sure I'm not in a heavy position ahead of any big release. And then once a release comes out, I see how the market reacts to that, and based on that, I'll make a determination if a counter trend's in play or if we're going to get a breakout because of that. When it comes to stop sizes, I think I'm tighter than most. I'm a momentum trader, and I use tick charts in correlation with my daily and 2-minute, so I'm very, very precise on where I'm getting in, and I'm typically just going for moves of 2 to 5 points. I call them pivot-to-pivot moves.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, I don't mean like floor trader pivots.
Sure.
What I'm looking for is just price pivots to get a run. I don't think scalping is a great strategy in E-minis anymore. Commissions will eat you up, and algos are quite frankly better at it. And so I think that's kind of my sweet spot, is that 2 to 4 or 5 point move range. And I'm typically risking about 1.5 points and then scaling in using position sizing to also manage risk.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's a it's a nice. I appreciate that. That's good for our listeners to hear. At least how to approach a trade. Is there, and again, I know we're coming up to the open here. Is there anything else that you're seeing for the next couple of days? I know you're, as you said, you look out for a couple of days out. Anything that's on your radar for the next couple of days that you think that our listeners, other traders, should keep an eye on?
Sure. So it's just on a technical basis, looking at the ES here, we've had this 80-point range, and I see 2060s as major resistance. If that breaks on volume, I'm expecting to see a pop-stop run to test all-time highs in the ES. But I think today will be kind of interesting. We had a little bit of a pop this morning. If 2060s hold as resistance, we've got the 2020 magnet that the market's kind of been oscillating over. So if we snap yesterday's low, I'm definitely going to be shorting pretty hard into that. But going into market open, I don't really have a strong bias on either direction, but I feel like in the first 30 to 60 minutes of the day, we'll probably figure out if we're going to break trend or continue, and then based on that, I'll just play the momentum.
No, that's great. No, Chris, we appreciate that. Thank you so much. Again, I know you're preparing for the open here, folks. We have Chris Dunn from dailytradingprofits.com. Chris, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We wish you a great and prosperous day.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on. This was fun.
Thank you very much. We hope to have you on again. Thank you, and have a great day.
Right. Talk soon. See ya.
Thanks, Chris. Folks, so that was Chris Dunn from Daily Trading Profits. Let's get back into some of the activity that we are seeing this morning. So we'll get into in just a quick prep in terms of where we are on overnight markets. We'll jump into, bear with us, we're just actually, while we're waiting for the overnight markets, let's take a look at where we are in the ES. We're higher by 11.25 handles at 20.54. Crude oil is still lower by 51 cents at $52.32. Here you have just some opinions. Anything from Secretary Lew to Goldman Sachs' Cohen to Jim Cramer. Certainly a lot of analysts, pundits, opinions are out there where oil is going. Certainly, we had a very candid thought from Chris Dunn from TradingProfits.com. So again, that's interesting to see. But at the top of your screen, we have the oil ETF ETNs that we like to watch on a daily basis with respect to do these ETFs, ETNs, what kind of correlation do they have with the particular the future, the oil future. Let's get into the commodities, energy, and raw materials. This morning we have again crude oil at higher by 44 cents at $52.41. Gasoline higher by 0.0082 at 1.5862. Natural gas higher by 0.073 at 2.670. This is something that we want to watch rather closely with the natural gas futures here. Been below this $3 level for quite some time. So again, watching that. So folks, there you have the New York Open as we speak. The heating oil lower by 0.0032 at 1.8697. Gold lower by 6.30, $6.30 at $1,235.20. Silver below that $17 area at lower by 13.5 cents at $16.93.5. Platinum lower by $4 at $1,216.40. Cocoa lower by $5 at $28.62. We had kind of an interesting morning in cocoa yesterday, higher by $50 in the morning. So again, interesting dynamics there. Something that we're keeping an eye on rather closely, and that is the Treasury yield. We have the 5-year at 1.15, the 10-year at 1.986, and the 30-year at 2.558. So again, wanting to see where we mentioned yesterday that one of the things that we're looking for is if we're also seeing a little bit of lift on this 2-year. So that's where we want to take a quick peek here on the Treasury here. We have the 2-year a little bit higher. We have just at around 0.57, so a little bit higher than we were about a year ago. Just about where we were a month ago on the 10 and the 30-year. So again, we did come down quite a bit. 5-year. So again, we want to see if we have a flattening yield curve on the U.S. Treasury side. Certainly adds to dynamics. Let's jump into specific stocks that are making news today. Let's see, on the upgrades, we'll run through some of these folks. On the upgrades from Deutsche, we have Citi upgraded to buy versus hold. We have COR upgraded to buy at Bank of America. Bank of America also upgrading EQR to buy. HMY market perform at BMO Capital. HAS outperform at BMO Capital. MOS to overweight versus neutral at HSBC. STJ buy versus neutral at Stern Aggie. TE buy versus neutral at UBS. Let's take a look at downgrades. ACC downgraded to neutral from buy at Citi. BRKR to neutral at BOFA. EPR downgraded to neutral at versus buy at Citigroup. FMC to hold versus buy at Vertical Research. FITB to buy to hold versus buy at Deutsche Bank. FSC to equal weight at Barclays. Also Barclays on Phelp downgraded to equal weight as well. And GPS downgraded to neutral from buy at Mizu. Initiations, this is where a particular analyst initiates a particular rating on the security. CEMP, new buy at Janie Capital, price target 35. HAIN, rated new outperform at Bernstein, price target at 70. INSM, new buy at Janie Capital, price target 33. PTX, new buy at Cantor, price target at 11. PRI, new hold at Jeffries, price target 55. PN, new market outperform at JMP, price target 16. And SF, rated new buy at Evercore ISI, price target 168. Some mentions this morning on Kramer. I'm sorry, from last night, Mad Money. Positive mentions: BMY, VRSK, FTR, NUE, WFC, and MRO. Negative mentions: MPC, AB, TAL, X, and RIG. Let's jump into some of the insider buying that we saw this morning, last night into this morning. PNNT, Pennant Park investment, we had a CEO purchase 189,000, and we had a director purchasing just under 120,000. ARLP, Alliance Resource Partners, we had a controller purchasing $154,000 in shares. RREDX, it's a real estate diversified income fund. We had a $50 million purchase from looks like it's a director. ATLS, Atlas Energy, we had Leon Cooperman purchasing $12 million worth in Atlas. Continuing on with insider purchases, we had a few smaller ones here. TNXP, Tonix Pharmaceutical, we had a $30,000 purchase by the CFO. We had also from Tonix, we had a $175,000 purchase from a director. AT&T, we had a director purchase $200,000 worth of security, and BYKB Bay Bancorp purchasing $466,000 worth of the security. On the syndicate side, we had ATRA, Atera Biopharmaceuticals, files to sell 3 million shares of common stock. Avenue Financial, AVNU, 2.5 million share IPO price at 11. Biocept, BIOC, 8 million shares secondary price at 1.25. ENSG files to sell 2.5 million shares of common stock. Health Insurance Innovations files to sell 800,000 shares of Class A common. IDRA files to sell $75 million dollars in common. Some of these some of these stocks we see on a daily basis in terms of the syndicate. So again, see how it turns out for the longer term as we look at these securities. Red Hill Biopharma, RDHL files to sell ADS shares, no amount given. Rose Rock Midstream, RRMS, files to sell 2 million common units representing limited partners. Teva files automatic mixed security shelf. Let's get into 13D filings. SAM, James Koch reports 30% passive stake. CAKE, BNY reports 6% passive stake. DNB, BNY Mellon reports 7.72% stake. NPBC, Warburg Pincus reports 8.26% stake. PETM, Jana no longer holds a position. SCTY, Draper Associates reports 5.17% stake. ONCE, Sophie Nova reports 8.6% stake. And TPX, H Partners reports 9.97% stake. So folks, as we are getting in the morning, early trading this morning, let's have a quick run through where we are on futures. And we have ES futures higher by 10, or the S&P 500 higher by 10 handles at 2052.25. We have oil lower now by 81 cents at 52.05. Gold lower by $8.20 at $1,233.40, and the 10-year, folks, right around that 2% at 1.995. The dollar at 94.757, higher by 0.319, certainly can have an impact on oil volatility this morning. Folks, thanks for joining us on Unusual Activity, powered by FinancialJuice.com with George Avedon and Milton Romanides. Thank you for joining us. Wishing you a great day and good hunting.